Raw Traveler here. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about iodine. Iodine is a very important element. I talked about B12 and cobalt in few of my previous videos. Now I decided to talk about iodine. Iodine is another natural element that's found in abundance actually on the earth, and its atomic number is 53. Well, there's a sun coming in from there, and it's a very important nutrient for humans. Most people realize or heard of using iodine for thyroid gland, and the thyroid gland does use it, but it's also used in almost every cell in the body. It prevents, some people say it keeps us from getting many different types of cancers, and it's just an overall very important element that's important in our bodies. Most people who consume iodized salt probably never need to worry about it, because there's sufficient amount. If you use salt even just a little bit per day, then it's fine. It's for the people who don't consume iodized salt that probably need to consider testing for it. And there's different kinds of tests. The best one, the most reliable one, is a test that is called the iodine loading test, which requires you to take a pretty high dose of iodine, and then every time you go to urinate, you should collect the urine, and after, I believe, 24 hours, they check how much iodine you've excreted, and then they could determine based on that whether you're deficient or not. And if you were deficient, you wouldn't excrete very much, and if you were not deficient, then you'd probably excrete most of it. So if you're on a vegan diet and you don't eat anything from the sea, you don't eat fish, of course, or seafood, and you don't eat sea vegetables, like things like kelp or dulse or nori, or any kind of seaweed, which a lot of people probably don't consume. Personally, I very, very rarely consume those kinds of foods. Once in a while we'll have a little bit of nori or possibly kelp, but that might be 2, 3 times, 4 times a year at most. So, but if you do consume those kinds of things somewhat regularly, then you probably don't need to worry about your iodine levels as well, because there's a lot. Most of the iodine in the world is actually in the sea, because iodine, the element, bonds really well with water, and that's why whenever it gets close to water, it ends up being in the water. And that means everything that comes out of the sea, like fish and shellfish and all that, they have tons of iodine. So if you eat that kind of stuff with any kind of regularity, you probably don't need any iodine. You probably get, in fact, you may get too much if you eat a lot of it. Like the Japanese people, they eat a lot of fish and a lot of shellfish and a lot of sushi, and they get tons and tons of iodine, but yet the cancer rates in Japan are pretty low. So they seem to be pretty healthy people overall, maybe because of that. Maybe it's just anecdotal, or who knows, but they tend to be okay. There may be some issues with like too much iodine for the Japanese people, but overall they're pretty healthy. But other things that have iodine in it that are actually grown on the land are things like pineapple, bananas, strawberries, mango, dates, apricots, coconuts, hazelnuts, spinach, and potato. Of course, if these foods are grown in soil that doesn't have much iodine, then of course they won't have any iodine. So it depends where you live and what kind of soil is being used and how many organic practices are used, or if they're using just completely dead soil and conventional farming and they just put 2 or 3 different elements down for the fertilizer, then you're probably not getting sufficient iodine. So you probably need to get tested, and if your test comes back that you're deficient, then you might need to figure out a way that you can get some of these foods that were grown in iodine-rich soil. That would be the best way to improve that issue. Because most people who eat a raw vegan diet are going to eat tons of these foods. They're going to eat tons of pineapple, tons of bananas, tons of strawberries. I was eating, when I lived in California, I was eating almost a half a flat of strawberries in one go. Half a flat is, I think it's 6 of those little baskets. The little baskets that you find at the grocery store of strawberries, I would just polish off 6 of those at one shot. So I don't know how many cups that would be, but it's quite an amount of strawberries. If there was any iodine in the soil those strawberries grew in, then I probably got sufficient amounts when I was eating strawberries, because they do have quite a bit of iodine when there's iodine in the soil. Then of course mango, dates, raw vegans eat tons and tons of those too. Coconuts, well, you probably don't eat tons of them, but you still can take one every now and then and get some iodine again. If coconuts tend to grow near the sea, and therefore most will probably have iodine in them. Hazelnuts, again, it's probably not something you're going to eat a lot of, but they have iodine in them. And spinach, well, if spinach actually was grown in healthy soil, then just going for a few cups of spinach, you're probably going to get sufficient amount of iodine. So that's what I have to say today about iodine, and I hope to see you soon in another video. Bye-bye.